this short interview session with Minister Yasmin Fouad, who's the Egyptian Environment Minister, still in Glasgow, as it should be. And the theme of this short conversation between the two of us will be from COP26, Glasgow, to COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And this is why I'm very glad that you were able to join us today, Minister. I have a few questions for you, if that's all right. We can see you now. Welcome again. And congratulations from what I see behind you, which is an extremely nice picture, which says a lot about our environmental issues. So thanks again for being with us, Minister. My first question will, of course, be where we start from, which is this COP26 in Glasgow, where you still are working hard, as I understand. So in your view, at this stage, which is not the totally final stage, how would you rate COP26? In your view, what are the good news? What are the less good news? What's your overall take on the result of this conference?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to conduct this interview as part of Paris Peace Forum. We're still in Glasgow negotiating the texts. Some parts are working well, like the global goal on adaptation, transparency. We're still in discussing Article 6, but the most important thing is the climate finance is still under negotiations between the technical work, which is the technical negotiators, and the political process with the ministers. It's my honor that I am supporting, together with Mr. Per Poland, Minister of Environment of Sweden, supporting the COP presidency in facilitating the negotiations of the climate finance. Still, there are discussions ongoing on the long-term finance, on the new collective goal, its process, structure. We're almost done with the adaptation package. There are some parts that will need some tweaking, but overall, the Glasgow COP26 is progressing well in some parts and still lacking behind in the parts that relates more to the needs and the aspirations of the developing countries.
Yeah, so that's very clear. What do you make, Minister, from this US-China declaration yesterday, and notably on this apparently common endeavor to remain within the 1.5 degree? Do you believe this is a sort of needed consolidation of what was in Paris, where the language might have been less affirmative? How do you rate this declaration? How do you interpret this signal?
This is really very good agreement. It brings back the Paris into place, the common but differentiated responsibility. And we hope that we will be able to move forward with that agreement as part of moving ahead the climate action, not only keeping the 1.5 alive and assuming the responsibilities of the main emitters in that process, but also looking at further complementarity to that package, which is the balance between the mitigation and the adaptation to complete the whole process of the Paris Agreement.
Okay, so thanks very much. So clearly, some move forward on adaptation, a possible move forward on transparency, which I would agree with you is an essential component, because this is where pressure by public opinion is allowed. If they get the real numbers, if they get the real signposts on whatever decarbonation and climate mitigation or adaptation signal. I understand that the dices are still rolling on finance, and notably on this big finance gap between North and South. Would you agree that already some progress has been made on transparency, or is it still too soon to say?
No, we're still working on that. Not too soon, but we're almost finalizing that, but still work is in progress. By the way, work is in progress at all streams right now, and we are expecting the presidency to provide a text this afternoon.
Okay. No, I'm mentioning this because, as you know, the Paris Peace Forum is mobilizing and mobilized itself by a lot of NGOs, including environmental NGOs, and I think this time they've all decided to make a push on this transparency issue, which is, of course, where they can get the lever they want to have on governments to accelerate the roadmap to decarbonization. Thanks for this first set of answers. Now, Minister, if we start looking at next year, COP27, your COP, the one you will be handling, how do you already see what might overflow into the next COP? Are you already in a position to tell us a bit about your priorities as you see them, given what will have happened and not happened in Glasgow?
Okay, thank you for that question. It's a bit early to discuss the priorities for COP27 for two main things. First, we need to wait for the outcomes of Glasgow, which will happen tomorrow, hopefully, or after tomorrow at the latest. Secondly, because we need to look on how the next COP, if the rule book of Paris would be finalized, would be articulated. But initially, if we are describing the upcoming COP27 and Egypt is hosting that COP on behalf of Africa, and you see the photo at the back represents the vast natural resources of Africa in coordination and in harmony with human beings, and that's the whole interaction. The interaction between the climate, the land, the plants, and the human being and the citizen. That's the whole harmony that we're looking for. But as representing Africa, it will be an African COP, and I don't see by any means that adaptation or climate finance will not continue to be part of those issues that will heavily be discussed in the COP27.
So, adaptation, climate finance. Should we also mention this notion of acceleration, which I think has appeared quite clearly in Glasgow, this notion that if there is an agreement to stick to the below 1.5 degree, this entails, has as a consequence to accelerate whatever national roadmap to decarbonization. Would you agree that next year a new signal of acceleration would be part of what you would consider?
Acceleration will be part of the whole process for the climate action agenda. It's not taking one part and leaving the other part. Acceleration would mean we need to accelerate action in mitigation, in adaptation, and definitely in means of implementation. So we will be pushing ahead for the acceleration at the three fronts together.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Is there in the format of the COP, which is this very wide gathering between governments, NGOs, big companies that have a stake in climate change, whether pushing for climate change or sometimes not pushing for climate change, but we know that there is a movement within the corporate field and world to move more towards what we call ESG. Do you forecast for COP27 the same kind of mix of participation, or are there areas, bits, pieces of the way the COPs are prepared and work that you would intend to review?
No, it's the COPs are very similar everywhere around the world. I don't see why there will be different in the participation. There is a participation of the government, the parties to the convention. There is participation of the civil society. There is a pre-COP for the youth that will be there. But maybe we would like to think also coming from the experiences of other, that the private sector and the banking sector will be part of that, which happens here already in Glasgow. So I don't see a difference in Egypt hosting the COP and the participation other than the regular COPs, making an inclusive, multidisciplinary participation of all stakeholders relevant to the climate action.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for mentioning this, which is, as you know, the sort of trademark of the Paris Peace Forum, this notion of multi-stakeholdership, this notion that you have to engage in international cooperation more than traditional sovereigns, and they are, of course, very important and useful. But this is, of course, a model which we cherish a lot at the Paris Peace Forum. This leads me to my final question, Minister, which is more about your own country, Egypt, which has launched a first national climate change strategy on the occasion of the COP26 in Glasgow. Can you tell us a bit about this strategy, sort of a quick overview of what you have in mind, what you have tabled, and that the sort of way which Egypt intends to embark on?
Okay, the climate change strategy is a product of the National Council for Climate Change that has been uplifted to be headed by the Prime Minister, Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, and the participation of line ministers in that National Council. The strategy contains 5 objectives. The first one is how can we move to a low carbon sustainable economic growth. The second one, how can we build a more resilient future? The third one is the governance of the climate change. The third is the finance infrastructure and the funding for the different programs. And the fifth is the R&D and the sites. Under each of those, there is a balance that under the mitigation, we're talking about moving further into energy efficiency, into renewable energy, into more clean industry, in clean transport. And on the other side, how can we make more resilient cities, resilient infrastructure, more technologies related to the water resources, to the irrigation, how can we introduce new crops and practices related to sustainable agriculture. The funding, it is a mix between the funding from the banking sector to the private sector, and investment through the green economic incentives, how can we increase the public funding? And by the way, Egypt has launched its first environmental sustainability criteria with 2 targets. A target of 50% of our national budget will be green projects by 2025, and 100% of our national budget will be green projects by 2030. And that's a very bold and ambitious target. I can even see that target beyond the climate change because it covers everything related to the sustainability. So instead of practicing or preaching others that let's go to the private sector and ask them to green their process and their practices, or to the banking sector, let's integrate climate action and risk action into the loans and the sovereign loans that you are providing. We're starting by greening our own national budget, and that's a very bold decision as part of the green recovery strategy of Egypt within the pandemic to build back better. It's a very ambitious strategy, and that strategy is been done in a consultative process with the line ministers. We're going through a consultative process with the civil society and with the other experts as well. And we hope that that strategy will come further into more implementation action plan on the ground. And the best thing about the strategy that it comes in alignment with Egypt Vision Sustainable Development Strategy 2030, and the linkages is very clear. It's not a technical strategy that is more of an environmental part, but it touches on the economic, social, and other parts, because simply climate change hits hard all development process, so you cannot tackle it from the environmental only point of view. Thank you.
Well, that's quite impressive. You obviously have made a full plate for years and maybe decades to come. But thanks for these precisions. Quite impressive, quite ambitious. We are now moving to the end of this short conversation. Minister, thank you very much for participating. And you know, and your presence with us today shows that on our side, we are ready to try and help and mobilize civil society, big businesses, big academic institutions, cities on this absolutely major roadmap to addressing climate change. Many thanks. Good luck for your final hours in Glasgow. We need you to succeed, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope so. Best of luck for the whole world and a successful COP26, and best of luck to the Paris Peace Forum with all your sessions. All the best.
Many thanks. Bye-bye, Minister.